Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
We've got a cold snap back in Greece. We've got snow on the mountains again.
Oh, what's your temperature?
Oh, well, I don't know. 11 degrees, it says, in the house.
Oh, good. About the same as us, only we've got sunny, what Marion calls fried eggs for 2 days, which is the symbol on the weather app where it's like a yellow sun with yellow, things coming out of it.
Rays, I think they're called.
Yes, rays, indeed, although I'm not sure. Well, the graphic representation of a ray, yeah. Now, tell me about your week.
Okay, well, it's been a very busy week because I've had an issue with my bank account, which means I've had to swap from using my business bank account to my personal bank account for a month, which means every single time anything tries to go out of my business bank account, I then get a notification. I have to go and put my personal card in to pay the thing, knowing that I'm going to have to swap it all over again at the end of the month. Right. And, of course, it screwed up my accounts horribly because, of course, it's not going through zero as it should. So I'm going to have to keep a manual tally on the spreadsheet for what I've spent during the month and what's been in and out. And it's all just a load of extra work I didn't need, really. So not very happy about that.
No.
But nothing I can do about it, so keeping a cheery face on about it.
Well done.
And been to Dave's Dining Club last week. We went to a local restaurant that we all frequent a lot, but we hadn't actually been there en masse for a Dave's Dining Club. So we did that, and the food was absolutely brilliant. Had a lovely time. Weekend.
Is that one we, the listener, know by name?
It's Melissa's.
Melissa's. Yes, you have, yeah.
It's an Albanian lady who learned to cook in Germany. She's absolutely fantastic. I was there last night, again, a massive sea bream, like that filled the plate. And it was just grilled on the grill with lemon juice and everything. And we had just, fresh salads and things with it. Oh, my God, it was so good. £15 a head. 15 euros a head, I should say. It's even better.
It is better, yeah.
And that included, the rosé to go with it. So that's not bad at all. Weekend of work. I really went full on the story grid at the weekend. I rearranged all my chapters. I rewrote my first chapter. Then I put it to one side, and I still wasn't really happy with it, but I was happier with it than I had been the other two openings. And then I realised that if I put one of the other openings on the end of it, and then introduce the villain in the first chapter, because that's another thing. I've had a realisation. I'm not writing a sci-fi book at all. I'm writing an action thriller.
Okay.
And the reason that's important is because I kept feeling dissatisfied with it as a sci-fi book. I felt there wasn't enough science in it for a sci-fi. And I was sort of measuring myself subconsciously, I think, against, the greats that I've read. I was thinking this just is a bit too cozy, it's not hard science enough. And then when I realised I was writing an action thriller, all the pressure dropped away. And I thought, okay, so my first book's an action thriller. I can do that. And I'm not as emotionally wedded to the genre, I think.
Yes.
So that was a bit of a breakthrough, really. And then yesterday we went and we did 5 Own It recordings because we're coming up to the time of year where everyone has to keep popping back to England for various reasons.
No, you don't mean Own It, do you?
No, I don't. I mean Right Club.
Yes.
5 Right Club recordings. So we did that, and what a laugh it was. We did one on erotic writing, which, first of all, our name the novel was an erotic book. And we were trying to make the whole show so that we didn't have to put an explicit sticker on it.
Yeah.
Because then people can't listen to it at work. So we did a whole topic on erotic writing without being explicit in any way. But we did an awful lot of giggling. There was, once you start, you can't stop. And there were two people get corpsing. And that was making everyone else laugh. And one person tried to write a bit of an erotic thing for their work in progress, but it was about as erotic as a weather forecast. And we interviewed an erotic writer called Bambi from America. And she actually lives in the Bible Belt, and she's a devout Christian, happily married for 30 years. And she writes 2 kinds of novels. She writes spicy historical fiction, which is where, there's a little bit of rompy-pompy going on. And then she also writes erotic fiction, which is a lot more full-on, shall we say. And she told us the difference between the two, and there's a lot more internal journey and a lot more feelings involved in the spicy stuff as opposed to the erotic stuff. The erotic stuff's much more full on. But then she said she went to, when they first went to a reception at their church, because they moved down, she's doing very well on this. They've got his and hers Harley Davidsons and a great big house in Alabama somewhere. But she went to a drinks thing for her church, and the pastor said to her and her husband, "So do tell us all, what's the secret of a happy marriage for 30 years?" And she said, "A bit of light bondage."
How did that go over?
It went pretty well, apparently. He's a young chap, and he was quite open to the idea of discussing, within marriage, what couples can do to keep each other happy.
And did Right Club, did the posse agree on a piece of erotic fiction that you could recommend to all of us? Because not my genre, really. Not because I've steered away from it I've never read any decent erotic anything. Well,
that's right. The problem with 50 Shades of Grey was it was so badly written. So everybody who tried reading it hated it because it was so badly written and the story was so thin. I'm not sure I can.
Have a recommendation? No.
Well, I read The Woman's Room recently, and there's a 2-page scene in the middle when she goes to university and meets a young man. And they get it on, as they say, in the words of Marvin Gaye.
Indeed.
And, it was very erotic indeed, very nicely written. So if you.
Well, I have read that, but I read that about 40 years ago.
Well, give it another go. It stands the test of time.
Oh, didn't we agree? Hang on a minute, caller. I'm just swiveling in my chair. Didn't we agree there's a copy of it on the desk behind me in Bromley? Hang on. Oh, no, it's The Group by Mary McCarthy. Easily confused.
Right. Well, anyway, so most of the things that most people think are erotic, like Lady Chatterley's Lover, just aren't very well written.
No, indeed. And, I think Lady Chatterley's Lover is reasonably well written because he was a good writer, but it's quite dry. I'd rather have Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye, quite frankly.
Really? But it was a very funny episode, and we did end up laughing a lot, as you could imagine.
Well, a bit like laughing in church, isn't it? You can't stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Forbidden laughter. I'm not going to bang on again for as long as I did last week about movies, but I've seen 4 more great ones this week, and of course it was BAFTA on Sunday night. And the ones that I've seen this great are If Beale Street Could Talk, which was the follow-up to Moonlight that won the Best Film Oscar 2 years ago. A film that streams on Netflix called Roma, which won big at the BAFTAs on Sunday night. It won Best Film, Best Director, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Not in the English Language, which I was quite pleased with because I struggled to watch 2.5 hours of black and white subtitled Mexican film that afternoon, but it was worth it. And then Widows, which was written by Linda LaPlante as a novel in the 80s and was an ITV television series back then as well, but has now been updated and was gritty. Do you remember that tall, slightly strawberry blonde bird who was in The Night Manager?
Yes.
She was in it, and she was brilliant. And that one wonderful. All of these people had good people in it. And finally, my 4th one this week was Bohemian Rhapsody with Rami Malek, who is so like Freddie Mercury. It's uncanny. He's totally brilliant. And I saw one of the actors last night saying that they mocked up the set that Queen did at Live Aid, which was about 20 minutes, and the actors in this film learnt it move for move and replicated it in the movie, which is quite an achievement. But anyway, it brought back that whole Live Aid thing, which was brilliant. Now, I've had a lovely week, and my favourite thing about the whole week was all the winners at BAFTA simply displayed to me what lovely people they were. They were modest and excited and tearful and pleased and made lovely speeches, and it was just all lovely, really, except for Joanna Lumley, who did the emceeing, and I didn't think she had an appalling script, and people were terribly critical of her, and that slightly spoiled the whole thing. But not the films and not the winners.
Right. Well, I watched The Wife last weekend on your recommendation.
Yes.
I think on balance I enjoyed it.
Yes, you said at the time something about it being rather character-driven, and of course that's my favourite sort, not yours, you inferred.
Yeah, looking back on it, I think I did enjoy it, but it was a bit different to what I usually watch and expected. So.
Yes, and I think if anything for me, that's the whole exercise I put myself through for the Oscars and the BAFTAs, which is I watch things I wouldn't normally, which is one of my things actually, because I find it stretching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I resigned from book club because I found it too stretching, and I realised that out of the 12 books we've read in the last year, I'd only enjoyed 2 of them, and one of them was my recommendation. So,
well, I think book clubs can be if you're a bit short of time, you can sometimes end up in a book club going, I don't know, I'm reading this. I don't know, I'm reading this. I wish I was reading a page turner. Yeah, but anyway, whatever.
Life, I felt that I had too much to do. Life was too short, and
yeah. Interestingly, later on, I'm going to tell you about a book that I discovered in a book club. I can't remember whose choice it was, but if it hadn't been for a book club, I would never have discovered one of my favourite books of all time. So, like everything, Nicola, it's all a bit, 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, isn't it? So tell me what's fueled your fire.
Yes. Well, what's fueled my fire is I've told 2 of my business books yesterday, 2 in one day.
Lovely.
So I've been, jigging things around so that all of the calls to action on my 1-minute videos go to that page. And I've got a copy of it on my front page, and then I've got a copy of it on my books page at the top. So, I'm not advertising it or anything, but some of the visitors to my website chose to buy it, and that was really nice. So I'm hoping I'm going to think more about how to get more of that.
Okay, is that it?
Yes, that's it.
No, because I'm going to be a bit wordy here.
Oh, good.
Seeing all of these films recently and getting over emotional about creative people, I realised how important this is to me. So this is a medium, creativity, that I understand, in film, but I also understand it in reading, writing, and music too. Less so in the visual arts, but I'm learning. And I remembered that I deliberately turned my coaching business into this direction a few years ago before the launch of Club 100. So that's about 5 years ago. And I'm not sure why I did that. And I think on reflection, it must have been instinct rather than acumen, but it's turned out to have been a smarter move than I could possibly have imagined at the time. And now I have this realization about the importance of creativity and creative people in my life. And I remember that when I was an accountant, I used to look after alternative comedy groups and stand-ups and musicians and chefs. Lots of those were clients of mine too. And in those days, I didn't think or know that I was also creative. And then I did after I sold my businesses and realized the full breadth of what creativity can mean and how many ways there are to be creative and to express it. And now I've realized this week that I think creativity is one of my top values in this life. And what really helped me work that out in my own understanding of myself was my wealth dynamics profile.
Yes.
Because both of us came out as creators, which is we bring things into the world that weren't here before. So that might not be, we've both written books, but that might not be songs or artworks or movies, but it's creative.
Yes, and I used to think I wasn't creative at all for years. I was in business, and it's only when you sort of stop and think that actually doing business deals is creative. You're making things happen that weren't there before.
Yeah.
But I was just so, disparaging, I suppose, of suits. When I was at art college, everyone was very disparaging about suits, and then I came out and into the world and became a suit. And thought that was it. I wasn't being creative anymore, but that was absolute nonsense, of course.
It is. I was never disparaging of suits. My whole life has been in suits. But I think, it's the understanding that perhaps the definition of creativity that we were brought up with were the children who were in the arts stream.
Yeah.
And what I really like on Facebook now is how much stuff you see about the importance of arts in education. For instance, music was my thing at school, and music is the same part of the brain as maths, which I then went on to do for a living. So the arts do have a value, and they're the first to get chopped in times of austerity. So there's this whole thing. And funnily enough, our podcast has gone in this direction since you started to be a creative writer. It's much more about how important it is in both of our lives, individually and in our work, to be with people, ideas people, I suppose, creative people, inventors with a small I, people who, if we look at, say, Richard with his lovely cartoons or whatever it is, there are people in our world. Well, I couldn't be without them now. They're too important to me.
Yeah. And even here out, funny enough, we were talking about someone's landlord last night who owns the house that my friends live in. And he said, he's the one who makes the fabulous steampunk fish. And I said, oh, my God, I've seen those. They're absolutely amazing. They're like metal fish, but they're so colourful. and they're not, rusty and horrid. They're beautiful. So he's recycling old tin cans to make these fabulous shiny fish that are just so nice. And I just thought, and he's selling them on Etsy globally. And this is, a Greek bloke that drives a tractor. So it's completely, we're surrounded by it here. It's.
I think also, if so many people have that urge to create but are not doing it. If you hear the story of a Greek tractor driver who's given in to his urge to create and selling things on Etsy, that's encouraging. Yeah,
it is. It's lovely. And of course, lots of people are semi-retired, if not retired here. So they've got to find things to do with themselves.
Yeah. Well, I would take issue with that. I saw, one of those, what is it called, where those old people go to the hotel, the India Hotel Baba. What's that program called?
This is so funny you should mention that, because Phoebe sent me a text this morning saying, I was watching a program last night about the old codgers who go and try and...
Yeah. That's it. Well, it started again last night, and there's this focus there always that old people need to fill their time, which I don't agree with. But obviously, it's lovely to find some things to, that you've got plenty of time to do whatever you want with it, without necessarily feeling that you must fill it. I resist the idea of filling time. But anyway, there we go.
But the kicker on the end of the text was, I really enjoyed it and it reminded me of you.
Oh, interesting. I had to stop watching it last night because I found it really annoying.
Oh, okay. What was Miriam Margolis in it?
Yeah, she is. I'm over her. I'm so over her. She's crude. In fact, she said something that if a man had said it, we would all have been up in arms. Also, I found the voiceover, who is an actor I adore, so it's not him, the script for the voiceover and the music, very patronising last night. And it's probably been there all along, but I've just never noticed. So I just got tired of it before the end. But they were in St. Petersburg in Russia last night, and that looked more interesting than I'd ever dared hope, quite frankly. Not that I'm planning to go there or even rush there or anything, but, I think, I know I have a low boredom threshold, but I think many programmes that run to, say, an hour are too long.
Yeah.
I lost interest at about 40 minutes.
Yeah, 40 minutes is about right, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, oh, no, not more of this.
Yeah, not one more section.
Yeah, quite.
Well, I've got something to look forward to tonight then, because I always watch it the day after.
Yes, quite. Focus of the week. Now, you sent me an urgent message, but I don't think we're going to be distracted by that. I think we're going to talk about what we agreed we'd talk about, which is love, because we're recording this today on Valentine's Day. Isn't that right?
Yes. When did I send you an urgent message? I don't remember doing that.
You sent a message saying, I'm doing too much again. Perhaps we'll discuss it on the podcast. I just ignored you because I'd already done my homework for the love section. All right, so groovy. So what I proposed, gentle listener, to Nicola, is that we would discuss things and people that we love. In fact, we came up between us with 4 or 5 categories, which is something I love, someone I love, books I love, work I love, and a wild card. And you won't be surprised to hear that Nicola said, oh, I really like the idea of the wild card. So shall we do 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, or do you want to go first and I'll go next?
No. It'll be too much of one person talking at one time.
We'll go 1, 1, shall we? So will you start with something you love?
I love my computer. I don't just love it because it's a tool that I can use. I love the way it feels. I love the way it looks. I love sliding it into its case. I love how thin it is. I just love it. I love the feel of it. I love the keyboards and I love the lights, and I just love my computer very much.
And what is it?
It's a MacBook Pro.
Okay. And how long have you had it?
I've had it a bit of a long time now. 2016, I think I got it.
Okay.
So fingers crossed it's showing no signs of wear at all. I keep it thoroughly groomed. I have, cleaned my Mac on it, and I have various things, and I do look after it. I clean it up, I tidy it up, and I make sure it's ready to go at all times.
Going back to the erotic fiction, slipping it into his cover was rather erotic there, I thought, Nicola. You've got a love thing going on with your MacBook Pro.
I have, and the funny thing is that once you start down that slippery slope, so to speak,
as it were, yes. I know, we're in double entendre heaven already, aren't we?
What about you then?
Well, something I love, I've written words. Listening, talking, podcasting, the spoken word, written in brackets, and the written one, which I'll come to later. But words, I love words. I don't think anybody who listens to this show could be in any doubt about that.
But it's
Now,
they are unique to us, aren't they? I mean, it's
yeah.
we constantly marvel on, especially when you look at all the different languages around the world that have developed. And Greek is so far removed from English; it couldn't possibly be. I think only Japanese or Chinese could be as gobbledygooky. But it's the fact that human beings have evolved to use such complex language. We talk about the etymology of words quite a lot on the other podcast, and the fact that the language has evolved and stayed alive, and new words are introduced all the time, and we lose the sense of words. And
it's all really important to me. Interesting issue. I don't have very many Greek words, but I do have a good Japanese word I use all the time, and a couple of Chinese words. I do love the meaning of words. I particularly love the meaning of people's names, because, of course, that's another word. I said to you last week, Albert, he doesn't sound as though he's Greek. No, he's Albanian. That sort of thing is something I feel.
Yes, I think it's Alberto, so I think I did.
Oh, okay. Now, someone I love?
Yes, go.
Oh, I've put me as a singleton, as a human being. It has to start there, I believe.
Absolutely, yes. In fact, I nearly put me on that one as well. But I changed my mind, because obviously Phoebe and Nelson, I love them very much. And the thing I love most about them is that they came from me and Irving, and they are little bits of me and Irving in certain ways, and then they're very much their own person. And you're constantly surprised by, I'm sure you are, by your nephews and nieces as well. They surprise you, don't they? It's
another piece of magic that they've got bits of both of you and they're separate. I do think that's quite magical, actually.
Yeah, and then they just, when they surprise you, that's what I like most. When because you sort of expect them to behave in certain ways, and then they turn around and do something completely different, and you're just like, oh, okay, there's this person who I love and I know very well and have spent years and years and years and years with, and look at them, what they're up to now.
Well, my niece, who's 31 and will be 32 in May, is running the London Marathon this year. She's 6'1". I mean, that's so not what a 6'1" person should be doing, but there we go.
Yeah, good for her.
As an example of a surprise. And she's running it for a charity I think you and I would both like, called Womankind, which is about promoting the interests of women around the world. Now, I've got books I love as our third category. Do you want to go?
Well, where do I start, Julie?
I know. It's a hard one, this, isn't it?
I've succumbed to this Sudoku, which is spelt with a T at the beginning, and it's a pile of books on your bedside table waiting to be read. And I have got a virtual pile of books. I've got a real pile of books, and I've got a virtual pile in my Kindle. And I realised, and I saw you liked it. I realised the other day the point of old age. So you can read all these blooming books.
Yeah.
Where would I start? If I had to pick one book in the whole wide world, I think it would have to be. Consider Phlebas by Ian M. Banks, because the first book of any author that you go on to love and read everything of is always the special moment, isn't it?
Yes, I couldn't limit myself to three. One, I've gone for memoirs as a genre, and I wrote a blog post about that once where I listed I find people's true stories very moving. And I'm noticing this week and last, when I talked to you about films, how many films I love are based on true stories. Because actually, human beings are just as interesting as fiction characters. Yeah. A book that I reread all the time, at least once a year, because it makes me cry with laughter, is Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods, about Bill Bryson and his fat friend who go and walk the Appalachian Trail, which is thousands of miles long. And I particularly love the sort of pathos of the fat chap who loads up his backpack with everything to eat, but by supper time he's got rid of it all because it's so heavy he can't carry it. That one just makes me die laughing. I love it. It's so good. Well, all Bill Bryson's books are very funny, but that one is my absolute favourite. But my favourite novel, the one I was telling you earlier that I discovered in a book club, is called Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver. And I loved it because I could identify with the heroine on page 1, even though she is a woodsman. Now, I think you'll think that's quite a jump, isn't it, from me, an office-based person, to an outdoor person whose job it is to, keep the wilderness in good shape. Anyway, I read that first in 2002, and I've got it on my Kindle, and I keep meaning to reread it. And every time anybody says, "What's your favourite?" I'd say it's that one. But I remember obliging my holiday pal to read it in 2002. And then we enjoyed a lot of conversations about who we would cast in the film roles if they ever turned it into a film or a drama series, which they've never done, which is a shame. But,
because the name rings bells for me.
Oh, she's written loads of things. She's a very good writer, Barbara Kingsolver. Yeah. And she's very much, she very much writes about nature and looking after it.
Oh, okay. Sounds intriguing. I just remembered a book I love, The Rainbow Comes and Goes by Diana Cooper. And there was 3 books in the trilogy, and she wrote them. They're a series of love letters between her and Duff Cooper, who she later married. And of course, Artemis Cooper was their child. I'm not sure if it's a son or a daughter. And Artemis Cooper went on to write the autobiography of Patrick Leigh Fermor, who lives down the road.
Yeah. So a bit of a writing dynasty, the Coopers.
Yeah, absolutely. But her books, it's so beautiful. It's, the two of them writing to each other just before the war, and she was an aristocrat, and her father was horrified at the idea of her marrying a commoner. And he said, well, okay, if you guys can, have an engagement, a long secret engagement, then I might relent. But so the letters were written to each other through this engagement and through the wars, both wars actually. And it's very moving because a lot of their friends die one by one in the wars, and they're trying to console each other, and it's just very beautiful. I could read that again tomorrow.
I mean, that must be the lost art of the love letter, or the lost art of letter writing. Yeah. That mostly must have gone by the wayside and be a very sad loss.
Yes, I think you're right, because we just message each other on Facebook.
Yeah. Or even text using, short versions of words, which we love, and emoticons. Now, are we done on books?
I think we are.
All right, tell me about work you love.
Well, I realised today, as I was looking at this, that I absolutely love the coaching work I do. I mean, I do lots of different work. I do, obviously setting things up for people and running Facebook ads for people, not so much of that nowadays. But the one thing that never gets old is the coaching and encouraging people to do things. One of my clients has just produced a fantastic webinar. She's a consultant and a trainer, but she focuses on productivity. And she's just produced a webinar under my guidance, which is going to really help with her to get new clients. And she comes across as really authoritative and calm and grounded. And, the content's really good. And she would never have made that without my encouragement. So, I feel very proud sometimes of the work that I help and encourage and support people to create. And it's 20 years ago, I was thinking, was it 98 or was it 99 I signed up as a coach? And actually I thought, well, it doesn't matter because it's 2019 now, so it's 20 years regardless. But I just absolutely love it still. It just never gets boring. That's it.
Well, you won't be surprised to hear mine is almost exactly the same. Listening and asking questions, being curious, finding out about people and helping them, and also writing and looking for creative ways to further both, because in my world they're interconnected. I write related to my coaching work, but I love that first session with somebody where you don't know who they are, and I say to them, right, tell me about you, and off they go, and I listen, and then I ask questions because I don't understand what they're saying, or because I'm curious about why they see the world that way. I suppose there's a fascination for me, excuse me, a psychological fascination with other people, and I love to help people. That thing I like quoting with my school report, which is, Judith is a helpful little girl. Judith still is a helpful little girl, age 63. But we're both blessed with that work. It's an honour and a privilege, isn't it, to help people. And I was saying to Alice, I think it was on Monday, the downside of it, if there is one, is when you put all your efforts into helping and encouraging, supporting other people's success, seeing them overtake you sometimes is a bit of a shock.
Yes, quite.
Because we've put all of our efforts into furthering them, and therefore the outcome is obvious if you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do get that. I get clients whose products take off like a rocket, whose mailing lists have got more people on them.
Yes. I heard you say that last week. It's difficult sometimes. One of my clients, she reminds me so much of things I haven't done that I end up taking more notes about what I should be doing than about what she's doing, which is great. But she knows that. I confess it every time.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah, we're lucky. We're lucky in our work. And now the last one, the wild card. I think you and I might be picking the same one here, actually. Probably. Yeah, you go first.
Okay, learning new stuff.
Oh, no.
I absolutely love learning new stuff. I've been neck deep in this story grid for the last 2 weeks. Listening to podcasts before I go to bed, when I wake up, in the middle of the night if I wake up, and I'm just immersing myself in learning how to become a writer. And the girls were surprised and delighted yesterday by my passion and how much I'm putting into it. Because, I think they thought I was just out with it, really, and it wasn't very important to me, but it's becoming more and more important. And just the very fact that at 57 years old, you can learn something brand new like this and still have the cognitive function to do that.
The more we employ that cognitive function, the longer we'll have it.
Oh, nice. It's like a muscle.
Yeah.
Use it or lose it.
Yes, I really believe that. And actually not just with learning new stuff or reading, but also languages, dance steps, the line dancing, that's a pattern in your brain which keeps you learning. There are so many different types of learning, all of which exercise the muscle in different ways.
Yeah. And it's such a shame, isn't it, that kids are being taught in school things that are no longer going to serve them, but they're not being taught to learn very well, I don't think.
Well, I have a friend who's married to an Oxford professor who would disagree with you and say that all of school education, though it seems irrelevant, is teaching us how to learn.
Well, so many children come out of the other end not ever wanting to learn anything ever again. So,
well, I think I probably did when I was 17, but it changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it does, yeah. And the fact that you can learn something new, if you decide you want... I was thinking the other day, because Phoebe's going through a bit of a patch where she doesn't really know what to do with herself. And she's got an interview today, actually, which might be good. But I feel one of my main jobs as a parent is to communicate to her that she can actually do whatever she wants to do. She just needs to decide and then learn how to do it to the best of her ability and, keep at it. And... I suppose that's my job as a parent, is just to open up the possibility and let her know that, you can go to YouTube and learn anything now, can't you?
Well, it's our job as a coach, actually, especially you can do anything you want and you'll be successful if you keep at it.
Yes. So what about you then?
Well, this is why I thought ours were going to be the same, because mine is music, and music's very important to you as well. But I've been very specific here. I've said the music scores on films and TV. So of those films I saw this week, what made the experience greater on 3 out of 4 of them, or 2 out of 3 of them, whatever, was the music. But what I really like about this is music scores on films and TV is the way I discover new music. So when I hear something, I go, oh, what's that? And I have to Google it, and I have to go to YouTube, and I have to find it, and I have to listen to it, and I have to listen to it over and over again. But I also like the way that the score always deepens the experience of the film and the TV for me.
That's an interesting career, isn't it? Deciding.
Oh, I want to be that person. I wish that was my job. And when they do it and they do it well, I think, oh my God, you clever person.
Yeah. What's it called? Is it music director or what's?
No, I don't think it is actually. I think it's something I don't know, but anyway, it's a good job, isn't it?
Yeah, and one that you wouldn't necessarily fall into unless you knew someone who did it.
And also, I think you'd have to know an awful lot of different types of music.
Yes, you would. Yes, really. And not just the stuff you like.
Yeah, not just the stuff you like. Yeah, because it basically has to fit the creative vision of the people who are making the film and not hinder it, only enhance it, or sometimes perhaps be just neutral.
Yes, very much. The thing is, I'm in an interesting place with music at the moment because I couldn't play any for about 2 years because it just reminded me of everything, and I'm starting to get it back now. So I am starting to play music on Saturday and Sunday mornings and around the house a bit more. Not as much as I will in the future, I'm sure, but.
I think that proves the point. Actually, is it goes right to the heart, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
And frequently makes me sob, but in a good way.
Well, every time I hear the opening dum 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 for the Bohemian Rhapsody, I think it makes my heart beat faster. Just want
yeah,
that's such a classic line.
Yeah, I know. I actually, one of the things I love best about that film was remembering A Night at the Opera, or whatever the album's called, but how important how albums like that were the soundtrack to my life back then.
Yes, it was funny you should mention soundtracks to your life. I'm going to talk about that in the last section.
Oh, okay. So that's our section on love. Quite fun.
As it is, yes.
Quite fun. Now, tell me, what is your word of the week?
Oh, passion.
Oh,
I know, following on from all of the double entendres, etc.
yeah.
No, it's about how I was sitting around the table last night, and two of the people used to be scientists. One used to be a teacher. One used to be in business and travel the world. And I was just listening to them all talking about their previous lives and about how passionate they were about what they did and how interesting and attractive that is in people.
Yeah, I agree.
Passionate about things now, passionate about things then, just passion in people. I love it.
And funnily enough, when you were talking about what their professions were, and you said they were, my thought was, I bet they still are, because you can't just, you don't do it for a living anymore, but you can't drop that sense of who you are as it was expressed through your work.
No, absolutely. And one of them was a pathologist and one of them was something else in medicine, and they were both very passionate and ran their departments and knew of each other, but didn't know each other till they got out here, which was interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm going for creativity. I'm sure we've done it before, but because of what I said earlier. But I noted when I was writing it down that often my word of the week means word of the day when we're prepping these notes for the show. But creativity has been my theme of the week this week, and I suspect much beyond on either side. And it just seems too small a word for just a week.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a way of life, really, isn't it?
It's expanding my head at the moment. Now, got any project updates?
Oh, well, I've got something quite interesting for you and exciting. I had a brief look when I had to go in to change the credit card on our Libsyn hosting. I noticed that our last 2 weekly downloads were up 30%. Actually, I'm not sure about that percentage, so you might want to work it out. We normally get 200 downloads on the first day, and we've had 300 so I'm not absolutely sure it's 30%, is it?
No, that sounds like 50% to me.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Good job I checked. Well, Judith, our podcast downloads are up 50%. Which is
on the first day?
On the first day, yes, in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Which is great, isn't it?
It's very great. But one of last week's episode was particularly well received. What to do when the product is you.
Ah, yes.
I know at least one person who listened to it twice. What was the one the week before? I can't remember.
I can't either.
No.
I remember the pictures. I had mittens last week, and I can't remember at all.
No.
Obviously, all this creativity and learning is just taking up all this space in my brain, and my memory's gone.
Interestingly, somebody who asked to join our group this week, you seem to have introduced a couple of questions which I hadn't seen before. You know, where did you hear about us? And why do you want to be in our group or something? And somebody said, because I hear it's all about writing and I'm interested in writing. That's quite funny.
Really? Oh, that's very interesting, because we don't think we talk about writing a lot. But...
No, I do. We do. We talk about writing a lot since it became your hobby. It's in the session every week. But that's okay. No, it doesn't matter. But that's the point, is that actually maybe they're interested in the business aspects of writing commercially. Who knows? Doesn't matter. So mine is, yes, I wrote on Monday. This week I did it as a Facebook note because I was writing about the wildly wealthy fast affirmations, and I've written that on my website many times. So I've met my commitment. It's still not breaking through. I do it because I've committed to it. I'm still not relishing it yet. I'm not going, oh, yippee, it's Monday, I get to write. I'm not feeling that yet. I'm writing about the topics that the stats on my blog told me were traffic drivers in the woo-woo sense. Because we talked about, being a professional blogger. Clearly forgotten the logic for why I'm doing this writing on Mondays, which I explained to you in detail on the podcast about 3 weeks ago. But never mind, the listener will remember, so that's all right. Tell me who or what's impressed you.
Well, I watched accidentally, I was watching something on my telly on YouTube, and I was making the fire at the same time, and it rolled over onto something else that it thought I would like. And indeed I did. It's The Last Bee Gee. It's a documentary about Barry Gibb, and he's just about to go back on the road, so it's obviously some sort of promotional thing, but it was very moving. He was being interviewed. I didn't realise they came from Manchester, and they went to live in Australia for a long time, so he was being interviewed by an Australian young lady for an Australian television show, and they went back and they revisited Miami and things like that, and obviously they played all the old tunes. Their dad was encouraging them. And they started doing sort of quite ordinary songs, a bit like the Eagles and people like that in the day. And then disco hit, and they developed their fairly unique sound. And I realised it was the soundtrack to my teenage years, the Bee Gees. And when they played "Staying Alive" and they had John Travolta doing the whole dance on the dance floor thing, I was grinning from ear to ear. But it was actually very moving as well, because he's the last remaining brother,
and he's the oldest.
And he's the oldest. Seeing the young siblings die. That's so sad.
Yeah.
But he hadn't really processed it. And when she asked him, how do you feel about being the last one? And he just welled up, and he just couldn't stop, and it was so, she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he said, no, it's great. I haven't really processed it. I haven't really cried yet. And it was very moving, and it made me think the only thing that can make me blub like a baby now is watching other people's grief, because it brings all, mine up.
And you see, I think that's very therapeutic. Every letter of condolence I've ever written since my first loss makes me cry. And what that's good is it's continuing to release what we hold inside about grief.
Yeah, absolutely. But then he's going on stage now, and he's touring. And he says, "I can't turn around because there's big pictures of my brother on." They're projecting big pictures of my brothers up there.
Yeah.
But he's on tour with his niece, and I can't remember the other relative. But he's on tour with family members, and he's younger family members, and he says he's really enjoying that. So good for him. Barry.
I also think he not only is he very talented, but he was the driving force as well, wasn't he?
Well, he was the main singer, and he had that falsetto.
Yeah.
But no, it was very nice, and it's funny, isn't it, how a lot of music stands the test of time. And even if you didn't like the music, it's like, I really loved Queen when I was about 12, and then I didn't really like rock music for the rest of my life. But when you hear it now, you realise how iconic it was.
I know.
Ditto the Bee Gees, really.
Yeah. Well, that's to the point we always make, which is even if it's not to our taste, it has to be of intrinsically good quality in order to sell in large numbers.
A la Matthias Rosé.
Yes, yeah. Although I was going to say slightly prefer both Queen and the Bee Gees to Matthias Rosé, but then I thought, don't know, in the right circs. Anyway, I'm going to do a trailer for our next 4 listener guests, because we've engaged them now. We realised that we were down to our last recording of the big batch that we did a year ago, and I put out a call. Nicola's going to Australia, and the travelling to and from and the stay in Australia is going to take a month. So we're only going to do 4 people before she goes away. But they are Linda from New Zealand, who's going to talk to us about communicating with clients. Kath, who says small is beautiful. Sue, on why people buy. And Karen, this is very intriguing, on boobs, babies and business. And they're all anxious. They're all stepping up anyway. They're all nervous. Who isn't? But they're stepping outside their comfort zone, either because I nudged them into it or because they volunteered because they know it's good for them and for the podcast. They all own it, their own businesses and their lives, and I know it'll be wonderful. And I need to talk to you off podcast about a little strategy idea I've had in connection with it. But we're going to record them next week and roll them out over the next 4 months or so.
Yeah, lovely. It lifts the format, doesn't it?
I love it that our listeners, and you and I are both agreed without discussing in advance, that we don't want any of these spammy foreigners who want to get on our podcast. We only want people from our community.
Spammy foreigners.
Well, we get these requests, don't they, from these people who say, "Oh, I love your podcast. Can I be on it?" You clearly never listen to it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's you never listen to it.
Yeah, quite.
Oh, great stuff. All right then. So we'll say goodbye for the public.
We will. Goodbye to the public.
Goodbye to our lovely listeners.
Yeah. Goodbye from her and goodbye from me, isn't it? Whatever it is. Anyway, see you next week, love.
Bye.
Bye.
How do they do it? Not a care and suffering. Wanna step into their world. Who holds the key?
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.